This is Daytime on 2. We continue now with a Scene special. The programme explores with football fans the situation that now faces them and asks what must be done to make English football fans welcome abroad once again.
Last week's Scene programme was a film about football abroad. It was made before the ill-fated Liverpool-Juventus European Cup final match in Brussels. It followed a group of Everton fans on a trip to Holland in support of their team. 4 of those fans who appeared in the film are here today in the studio. Everything went well, there was no trouble at all, and the Dutch police in fact said the fans would be welcome to return any time. But we've asked those 4 back to this special edition of Scene to discuss what happened only 8 weeks later, the tragic events in Brussels which resulted in a ban on English club football abroad. What must we do now in order that British fans will once again be welcome abroad? We also have 9 Liverpool fans, most of whom were in Brussels, and to remind us that this isn't just a Merseyside problem, 4 Spurs fans who have also been abroad with their team. No fans from Northern Ireland, Scotland or Wales, because your teams, of course, haven't been banned. But we would like to hear all your views, so can you please send them to Scene, and we'll then forward them on to the Football Association and the Sports Minister. The address to send them I'll show you at the end of the programme. As well as fans to represent football players, we have Garth Crooks of Tottenham Hotspur, who were looking forward to another season in Europe, and next to him, John Williams of Leicester University, who appeared in last week's film. After going abroad with football fans for 5 years, he was one of the authors of this book, Hooligans Abroad. And because the government has decided that it wants to be involved in this problem, we have David Ashby, Conservative Member of Parliament and Secretary to the Conservative Party's Sports Committee. Well, it's 3 weeks since Brussels now, so just to remind us what happened, let's look at some extracts from the TV sports and news programmes on the night and after it.
The Heysel Stadium in Brussels, the capital of Belgium, has been a sickening and bewildering sight. As a result, there is for certain serious injury when a wall collapsed, and maybe worse. I've seen at least 2 stretchers carried away, and the stretchers were covered from head to foot.
On May the 29th, at the European Cup final between Liverpool and Juventus, the violence of English football fans brought about the death of 38 people and injuries to 454. This is how the event was seen on television.
It appears to have begun an hour before kick-off when Liverpool fans broke out of their segregated area of the stadium and moved into the area occupied by Juventus fans. Scuffles and fighting began, and it's reported the Juventus fans did try to move away, but a wall collapsed and caused some of the injuries.
In that instant, many people were crushed to death, although at first they were not visible because of the other people piled on top of them. By this time, it was becoming clear that a slaughter had occurred. Minutes later, police were carrying out bodies on crowd control fences. It was a full 40 minutes before a proper stretcher was brought in. Other bodies lay unattended on the terrace.
Back in the stadium over an hour later, the Liverpool supporters were calmly waiting for the delayed start of the match. It was then that the Italian fans started to make trouble.
But sadly, the problem which started at the left-hand end is now getting a reply at the right-hand end when we are seeing nothing more or less than street fighting.
I tell you, I will never again go and see my team play football.
I'm Italian. I would like to say to all the English people that they are very famous in the world for their education and self-control and so on. We have now the proof that all over in continent everybody say, don't be like English
You know
people.
what I said now?
I'll tell the truth. Liverpool's team, then, you know what I mean? Might as well tell the truth. You know what I mean? I've seen Liverpool attack all Italian fans. And they done all Italians in. And the wall collapsed because the police just was too scared to go and get into the Liverpool fans. That's all there was to it.
As day broke, it was apparent how little effect the flimsy barriers had had in protecting a panicking crowd. Among the jumble of discarded horns and banners, the crumbled remains of a few concrete posts. Though most Liverpool fans departed quickly and discreetly, several hundred were still to be found this morning in Brussels Central Station. The mood was sober and subdued.
We never thought like a game involving Liverpool would ever result in supporters actually being killed. I mean, I phoned home, that's how I found out. Yeah. I mean, I imagine everyone's family back home is really worried. I know my mum was like, and she told me, she said, you know, it's just like war on television. And she said there was about 36 dead.
And you weren't aware of this?
No, we didn't know anybody was dead.
Well, I mean, it just happened so quick. I mean, the supporters, well, it was the minority again, the supporters that ran over to cause trouble. And the Italians just panicked.
You must blame the Liverpool supporters, how they started the trouble. But it all started out the Juventus supporters that have tickets for our end.
I'll never go again. I've watched Liverpool for 30 odd years. No way I'll go again. No way. I'm just ashamed. Total disgrace.
They watched their victorious team return in silence. In Italy, the word used to describe the event is massacre. Their European Cup now holds no value for them.
As they draped the coffins with Italian flags, an official chalked the destination on each one. There were 22 Italian dead, and at the end of the row, the coffins of 2 French and a Belgian victim. For the 100 or so relatives who had arrived from Italy, it was to be a sad, emotional occasion. They were still stunned by what had happened to their loved ones in the football stadium last Wednesday. Some were inconsolable. The mother of young Andreas Casula wept as she knelt in front of her son's coffin.
After Brussels, the world shuts the door on English clubs. Today, the governing body, FIFA, registered their disgust over the events at Brussels by banning English clubs from all internationals.
It had been a night of shame, and by imposing sanctions, FIFA was conscious of its duties and responsibilities and would spare no effort to build up the image of world football again.
Well, first of all, after that, I'd like to know what you, the football supporters, think of what happened in Brussels 3 weeks on. Perhaps I could ask Colin first, because you were actually in Zed's stand, weren't you, in Brussels when it happened. So are you ashamed at all about the way Liverpool fans behaved, or not?
But some of them, like most of them, it's just, there can't be anything said for them, because they didn't do anything. It's a minority, but they're all getting blamed.
There was a chap in front of us who was French who told us that there was a handful of people dead. But I mean, all I can really say is that I didn't eat for 2 days. That really sums it up. The whole thing was just confusion at the time. I've been rather upset about the hypocritical way our government and the big people in sport have handled it. I mean, there's 2 sides to every story. But, you know, I'm no way taking any blame away from Liverpool. What Liverpool supporters did was on film.
Spurs fans, for example, have got a much worse reputation than Liverpool fans. Liverpool fans really have got quite a good record so far. Do you think, really, it could easily have been Spurs fans involved in a disaster like this?
Well, yes. I mean, all the trouble that's been abroad, it was bound to happen to someone sooner or later, wasn't it? I mean, at Bruges, there wasn't, or Anderlecht, there was a fair amount of trouble, but there was nothing on the scale that there was, you know, with Liverpool, but it's bound to happen. It was going to happen next season, could have happened the season after. Just Liverpool, the unlucky ones.
Young lads get together, and they think they're good together, and they think they can set the world on. That's how it happens. You have a few beers, they feel all right. And it's the beer what gives them courage to do it. Because if one of them lads on there, you get one of them on his own, he won't run a Juventus fan. But give him a gang of them, and a gang of Juventus fans. Give the Liverpool lads beer and the Juventus fans beer. They'll do it.
I think the organisation's got something to do with it. Because they know what England's record is on the continent. And Liverpool command the same wide support as England can on the continent. So they should know what's going to happen. They know what kind of people's going to come over. So there should be better organisation I mean, some of our third division matches are better policed than that was.
Garth Crooks, can I ask you as a player, what's the player's point of view? What do you feel about Brussels now?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're all very disgusted, very emotional, use all the cliches you want to, about the situation. I know all the players, I know a lot of Everton players, the Everton fans here, I know a lot of Liverpool players, and there's not a player I've met who's not disgusted by the whole affair. But I think what football needs very, very quickly is a remedy to stop it now. How you go about doing that is another story, but that is what's got to happen because football can't afford it. And I don't know how long the government can afford it.
Well, we'll talk to the Conservative MP, David Ashby. What do you think? You're a member of the Conservative Party Sports Committee. What lessons do you draw from the Brussels incident?
I think they're very far-reaching. First of all, I feel that, listening to these lads here, we keep on talking about things like provocation and bad policing. It's terribly sad to think that football has to be surrounded by police and by railings and so on. I wonder really whether football is worth it at the end of the day, whether really the game is worth the effort that we're having to put in to police it.
Of course it's worth it. It's a great game. This game's getting played up and down the country, no acts of violence, no one's killed, people going to enjoy a game.
If you took football away, you'd still get these lads who want to fight. You still get them who have a bit of beer and they want to fight. So they'll take it out on something. It might be cricket. I mean, like, you can't see anyone fighting over cricket, but if you take football away, it might happen.
John Williams, I'd like to ask you as a sociologist from the University of Leicester, was this something that you saw coming? You've followed football for a long time now.
I mean, I agree with what's just been said about football. It seems to me to be a rather strange thing to suggest that football might be the sport which suffers and we should stop playing football, when quite clearly the causes of what happens at football grounds lay outside the game, and that we should really be looking in those kind of directions to find out what we can do, how we can move forward, and to look at the reasons why there are lads who go to football matches who find it important to fight and to express themselves in those kinds of ways.
As soon as the tragedy happened, everybody, it seemed, was talking about the English football hooliganism and how it should be dealt with and what the cause of it was.
What you're saying is, for want of a word, more brutal action by the police, if it's called for.
But you're not talking about human beings here, you're talking about animals. I mean, the way they go on, they act like animals, so they should be treated like animals.
Firstly, I would put them away. I would. Punishment is one thing. National service we've talked about, and I think we'd all agree on at some stage.
Well, I feel awful. I feel very disappointed, very upset, and you know, the disgraceful way that we handle ourselves yet again abroad was a disgrace for English football yet again.
I watched last night, I watched what people say, I felt exactly the same. I wish we could get those responsible, get them before a court and stiff sentences so that they stop anyone else.
Unspeakable. The mayhem that was created is unthinkable and absolutely disgraceful. But I think the degree of criminality involved, we've got to stop talking about football hooligans and describe them in real terms, criminals.
Well, we know it's obviously been an appalling tragedy, and the scum that we're stuck with in this country at our football matches, we've just got to do something about it.
Football is not the cause of hooliganism, football is the occasion. And if all football clubs would close tomorrow, hooliganism wouldn't end. It would come out in other ways. There is a determined effort in our country by a number of evil people to smash society. And that's the real root of the problem.
When we really get down to brass tacks, we've got to change attitudes, and we really got to go right back to thinking of family discipline and school discipline and discipline in the country generally, because the behaviour last night was animal.
I don't think there's one thing. I mean, it's a whole mixture of things. I mean, I've seen, it makes me sound like an old fogey at times. I go to schools, and there's a lack of discipline in schools to what I knew when I was a youngster. You know, we used to have a laugh and a joke, but you knew that little area not to cross, whereas now I think there's a lack of respect. That's the thing.
We've brought up our children, and it's partly due to the fault of our teachers and the parents, to expect rights, but not to accept responsibilities or duties. We seem to want gratification, and violence is one of the ways of expressing them.
There has always been, and will always be, a very tiny group of people who commit violent acts. And sometimes in war we call them heroes, and when they go and do it on the football pitch, then we're all upset about it.
The change, as I see it, is a change from a reasonably optimistic teenage society of, say, 25 years ago in the you've never had it so good era, to a very pessimistic teenage society nowadays, but for various reasons that have been mentioned, and I don't think it's a political point, really. And I think we have to tackle at its roots this pessimism which is set in among young people and which persuades them to behave in this shameful and shocking way.
Better brains than me, Barry, haven't got the solution yet, and I don't know what it is. I don't know how, I don't know what's happening to the football, some of the football supporters. I don't know, and I'm not just talking about English, I'm talking about other countries as well. They're having it as well, and I don't know why. I don't know why they do it. It doesn't seem, it's not a football match now. And maybe at the end of the day, I'll be thankful to get out of it. So what a horrible thing to say. Being in the game all this time and having to say a thing like that.
Well, it's sad to see Emlyn Hughes there talking about disgrace and national service and discipline and so on. What do you all think about that?
Italy had national service. Italy still has national service, hasn't it? And what did that do when we saw Juventus fans throwing bricks and flares and everything else? It didn't stop it, did it?
If a kid robs something, you know, well, bring back national service, they just think it's the answer for everything. That's not going to crack them, it's going to make them harder.
It's always the older people who say, bring back national service. They've got to bring something up to date to solve it.
Is there more aggression between English fans and foreign fans, or between English fans and other rival English clubs? Is there, in other words, is there more hatred between English fans and foreign fans than there is between English and
Well,
English?
it's difficult to generalise. I mean, it's certainly very true that the English supporters, as many people in this country have quite strong stereotypes of foreign people. I mean, as a nation, we tend to regard people from other countries as being in some ways inferior. We have a very superior view of ourselves. And so in that sense, there is an intensity, and lads who go abroad feel themselves to be in a very hostile, a very odd and different kind of environment. And some things that happen abroad they interpret as provocative, perhaps other people wouldn't. Garth, what's your view of that, having been abroad a lot?
Well, I would have to agree with John in many ways, is that there's a lot of fans when they go abroad. It's interesting to see that their view changes when they go abroad. They start to look at tradition and their attitudes of their fathers and their grandfathers, the fact that Britain, what it was, and they're not going to say second best from either the Italians or the Germans or whatever. That's very evident when you talk to fans when they go abroad. The attitude changes slightly when it's internal, whether it be Spurs, Arsenal, whether it be Liverpool, Everton. But even with the Liverpool-Everton situation, that is unique, because the macho thing can't air itself quite the same way, because the families are involved.
They're not that different from each other.
That's right, and they will not stand for it. It doesn't any chance to fester or to grow.
Fans who have been abroad, what do you think? Is there a big change in your own attitude? Can you detect a change in your attitude?
Not really. I mean, I think there's possibly, it's a big occasion compared to just going on a Saturday. People just tend to think, oh, great, you know, we're really here, we're on the continent and all the rest of it. But really, I don't think anyone really felt as though we wanted to have a go at some Italians or anything like that. It was just another game.
Mark, you had something to say too.
Seems to be when we're abroad, it's a situation where we're English and look at us. It's sort of that sort of warped pride.
Liverpool is such, well, they're disgusted by Britain because this government has just taken itself away from the North completely. They're not doing anything for the North. It's very much an us and them situation. Yeah. Merseyside's not interested in Britain, this British Bulldog attitude, or the England team. Not at all.
Of course, there are allegations of the National Front present there too. Did any of you see that, who were there?
I think the National Front have been easily used as a scapegoat. I don't really think. I think it was just a simple, you know, just the thing that's happened at many football matches before. Few scuffles, few people took revenge with what had gone on before. The National Front just used as a scapegoat as far as I could see.
I wonder though if I can ask David Ashby, do you think we perhaps engender too much patriotism in people? There are occasions when the papers who will call football fans who behave badly, flying the flag overzealously abroad, are called animals, and those papers who call them animals will be the same papers who run headlines like Gotcha when the Belgrano is sunk. Or
no, I don't really think so. I think patriotism's a very good thing, properly channelled.
Properly channelled is the key.
I don't see any harm in it. But I quite agree with the points that are being made, that the National Front has been taken as a scapegoat. And I quite honestly think that the political points that have been taken here as well are complete scapegoats for extremely bad behaviour. I don't think unemployment or anything like this has got anything whatsoever to do with this, with the behaviour of these fans.
I mean, it's interesting that in all societies we have problems, and ours is no exception. And we have bank robberies, and I don't see the government closing the banks. We have villains, and we try and treat them accordingly. And it's quite obvious the government's in power at the moment. One of their things they put forward was the fact that law and order was going to be uppermost in their mind. And the most important thing, as I see it, this is my own personal opinion, that if football does have this problem, then the government have got to take what is a part in what's going on to sort it out. They have a responsibility to footballers, to football, to supporters and to society.
Are we going to throw away everything that we fought for over the centuries in terms of civil rights, in terms of freedom, in terms of liberty, simply because of these football fans? Are you expecting the government to take draconian powers?
I'm expecting the government, as I see, to give magistrates powers to punish these people.
The magistrates have got those powers.
Secondly, the police haven't got the powers to do what they want when they catch the hooligans, because they're out of custody or whatever within 24 hours or whatever.
They have got the powers.
So, I mean, football is continually faced with a situation that it cannot handle. So who is now going to help the national game?
But aren't we missing the point of it? Do you think instead of talking about prevention after the event and prison and penalties and discipline and so on, shouldn't we be finding out why it happens in the first place? I'd like to pursue this thing, if I may, about why football violence seems to be a male aggressive thing, why it seems to be the male ego trying to assert itself, and why there are few women at the grounds. Indeed, presumably you don't want to see more women at the grounds. Is that right or wrong?
That's right, yeah. That is a male thing. I mean, when you were at school, if there was a couple of lads fighting in the playground, before you knew it, there was a big gang watching. That is just natural male. Whether it's right or it's wrong, that is the way it is.
I think if you look at the clubs which haven't got a history of violence, like so Watford, Ipswich and Norwich, it's more of a family occasion. I think that's what football's got to do. It's got to attract the families back into it, make it more of a family occasion. And, you know, as I say, there's no violence at Watford or any places like that. They've got the right atmosphere there. That's what we've got to get back into football.
Liz and Maria, would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When I did go, I went with my dad and my little brother and everything, and we was in the Cop in Anfield, and it was a great, dead good atmosphere and everything. Really enjoyed it. But now I wouldn't go on my own or with another girl. I mean, there's just no way. I wouldn't even dream of it.
What do you think of the way males behave? What do you think of the way...
It's pathetic. I think it's so childish, it's unbelievable. And these lot sit here and say, oh yes, and they should do this, they should do that. But when they're at a match, they're shouting over to the other fans as well. They're giving them loads of mouth, because you hear them talking about it, what they said to him and what they said to her.
Everton fan Davy, what do you think?
You're just saying that if more girls went to the match, it you know, stop some of the trouble, but it doesn't stop anything. Just girls go seeing it outside the ground where girls have tried to stop fights and just got knocked out in it.
What do you think, Liz?
I think that if we went to matches, boys wouldn't act the same as they do now, because I think they've got more respect for girls. They shouldn't swear and shout and throw bottles if girls are there. So I think it would stop all the problems if girls did go.
If the girls are there, and if families are there, it does dull in this macho attitude. You know, I have seen it when the wives are there and the girlfriends are there, that the lads are not so easy to want to give it the big and then the macho nonsense, you know.
John, what do you think?
You've got large urban areas, large, deprived, very hard, very tough urban areas, which are dominated by groups of lads. Basically, in relations between the sexes, it's the lads who dominate. It's the lads who rule and say what happens and where we're going to go and what we're going to do. And it's the lads who say, we go to the football, you stay at home, or you do this.
I would like to ask one thing. I'd like to find out, first of all, who has taken part in fighting on the terraces? Is anybody going to admit to it?
Come on, chaps. Go on. I don't need that for 1 minute.
Can I ask you, Mark? You haven't admitted to, owned up to any violence on the terraces, so I assume you haven't taken part in any. But why do you think it happens? What do fans get out of fighting on the terraces?
Just to see who's better than each other, really. Like clubs, they say, oh, they got a reputation sort of thing. It just goes down to that. And I'll say, you go to a place like Birmingham, a place like that. Birmingham have sort of bad reputation sort of thing. Well, they have, really. I've seen it, but and it just boils down to sort of who's the hardest sort of thing, who's got a reputation, sort of say, oh, we go out there, it's our five and sort of thing.
Well, in the end, whatever the reasons are, we have to accept that we've got to put our house in order, as I said before, we're going to be allowed back into world football. So what sort of responsibility can we accept? First of all, Garth.
I think the part that the players' responsibility goes, I think it is, as much as he can, is both keeping himself or showing a sign of respect both on and off the field, and making it clear that there's certain things that the media have highlighted with certain players is not really on. I know the clubs don't want it, because if it does have an effect with the people on the terraces, then it must stop.
Do you think footballers themselves can set a better example? Football is becoming an increasingly aggressive game, and the training of football players is increasingly aggressive too.
Yeah.
Do you think if they behaved in a more sportsmanlike manner, you could set a very constructive example?
Exactly the same could be said of the House of Commons.
Quite agree.
What do you think the government's responsibility should be?
Well, I think we've got to make quite sure that we can control and stop the violence at home before we can allow any sort of game to be played abroad. We cannot allow our violence to be exported abroad again. And to that extent, I support all the bans that have taken place. I often wonder whether part of the problem behind all this is that so many young people don't have the challenge that they used to have. And I'm not talking about national service. But there is, to some extent, a lack of challenge with some young people, and they look to the football grounds to provide that stimulus, and that challenge. And perhaps we should try and see if we can't channel those energies elsewhere.
John, I think you feel that there might be ways in which the needs for prestige can be channeled in other directions.
Well, clearly, I mean, Garth talked about dignity and respect. We live in a society at the moment in which there are some lads who get dignity and respect from fighting other lads at football matches. And clearly what we have to do if we're going to move forward is to resist the temptation to believe that we can lock the problem away, and that by using short, sharp shocks or by using any of these sorts of mechanisms we can solve hooliganism. Anybody who says they can solve hooliganism, they can stop lads wanting to fight each other at football matches or in other contexts because it goes on in lots of other places apart from matches, then they're being foolish. We're not going to solve this problem immediately. We're probably not going to solve this problem in 5, 10, 20 years. What we have to look at the long term are ways in which we can develop, as a society, develop channels and avenues and opportunities for lads from these sorts of areas to gain status and dignity in other ways apart from fighting each other.
Can I just ask you, the fans, what responsibility, if any, you feel you have to try and change things?
It's obvious that one of the best solutions is to stop away supporters. Stop letting people go away watching their own team. You should have more... Like, you could have places where you can watch the away match in your own town, something like that.
But then again, that's going to stop the ordinary support.
But are we past the point of no return on football violence? Are we in a new era now of football violence, and is it absolutely cloud cuckoo land to hope for peaceful football matches?
Oh, you never get that. You never get a peaceful football match. You'll stop the stabbings and killings simply by putting metal detectors in things like that. But football violence on the whole, it's too late.
It's just like around your own town where you live. You can't stop a weekend brawl, you know what I mean? It just happens. Fights every weekend.
It's not so much in it's when they get out on the street. Just go to off-field side, buy a bottle, and where the bottle lands after that, you know.
Violence is on the increase in society, not just football. I mean, it's talking about banning people from going abroad. How can you solve the problem with fans and players participating when no one's allowed to go? You can only solve the problem while it's there. You can't shovel it under the carpet and expect it to be solved. We've all got to participate together and solve it.
I think the problem's not just attached to football. Abroad, you get the likes of last year in Mallorca and Ibiza, all the trouble over there. They weren't football supporters, weren't they? They weren't watching football teams. But yeah, you know, Mallorca was talking about banning, you know, English and British young lads. It's not just in football, it's society.
Well, we seem to have come full circle. At the end of this discussion, we're still asking the question, why does football violence occur? What do you think? We'd like to hear your views too. Here's the address to write to. It's Scene, BBC School Television, London W12 8QT.
Another week of Daytime on 2 begins on